was the biological germ warfare, and I went from 200 pounds, making 90 grand a year back then, living it up, have my company paying all my bills, to just throwing up every day, and like every time I'd eat, and dysentery, and it's crazy to even talk, but it really happened. I lost almost 100 pounds in 2 months, and I went home and my mom thought I was on drugs, and she tricked me to go to the doctor, and that saved my life. They induced me into a coma, and it's crazy. I was in a coma at Maine Medical from January.
What year was this?
In 1986, and then they woke me up in February basically to say goodbye and give my consent to have my organs operated on to try to save me. And I appreciate it. That hospital's awesome. So go Maine Medical.
I've been there a few times myself.
Oh, they saved my ass. I saw all of them. But a long story shorter.
Not happening with you, Pete. Just not happening. We're going to be here a while.
So I went under like an 8-hour surgery. They like did that, whatever that surgery's called, for a live autopsy. They had to get every digestive organ, and they found out like I poisoned my system drinking water. It wasn't even a cool story. Like we got shit faced, we ate something bad. There was none of that. It was
no moonshine.
Water. It was water, and we always knew back then, don't drink Mexican water. They didn't say nothing about New York water or a plane, So
you had a transplant? Did this?
So what happened was I lost, let me see if I can get this straight. I lost a quarter of my liver, and then I lost a third of my pancreas, and because it was so infected, because I ended up getting a staph infection and everything. Yeah, and I had no idea what it was. And next thing I know, they induced me in a coma, and they let the swelling go down in the fight. And it didn't work, so they had to open me up, and they literally had to seal me with grommets, how they so they could sew me up. I was so sick, and I woke up in April, and it took so long to come out of it, and everything was different. You cared instead of you. You just
second lease on life will do that, right?
If you're right. There was a second lease on life. I always had a chip on my shoulder for divorced kid, pissed, and to go through something like that, it's awesome. Sorry, I usually don't talk about this at all, so excuse me. But
you never have to apologize for your own story. Uncle Pete's gets even more amazing when you consider the next life-changing moment that happened in 1998. Once again, another workplace accident.
I got tossed off a forklift at a warehouse, and I shattered T2 through C2, and also T8 is gone, which is your diaphragm. So for the rest of my life, it's like a nightmare. If I move wrong, I can't breathe. You go through that. And the pain from all the spasms, it's stroke material, so I'm not supposed to use my arms. I'm really a medical marijuana patient. Even though I say we grow awesome cannabis, it's really my wife, my daughter-in-law, and my son, because I can't transplant, I can't feel my fingers. I don't do any paperwork here. I can't do it. I'm totally 100% disabled.
Like so many people who have suffered a severe injury, Western medicine doctors prescribed a pain clinic. And you know what that means? Opioids to kill the pain.
So I'm supposed to be paralyzed from here down. And again, I don't talk about this, so this is weird. This isn't a pity party.
I needed to hear this story because I'd heard it from other people, and I just needed to hear it from you.
Can you imagine waking up from neck surgery after 215, 16 pounds, stronger than anybody, right? Working out all the time, hitting home runs in softball, left-handed, laughing my ass off. Oh, honey, look at this, and jacking one, laughing, to telling you can only lift a glass of milk or a half a gallon of milk for the rest of my life. I had a gym downstairs people worked out in. I didn't know what to do, and I was always blue collar. And so I had to find myself, and I couldn't do it through a pain clinic. And I tried. And the pain clinic for about 18 months almost ruined my life. Madly in love with my wife, wanted a divorce. I wanted a divorce. And she's like, shut up. And she knew it was the pills. And I was just an asshole on it. And one of my little leaguers, all grown up, came over and he said, hey, you should smoke this pot. And
How old were you when this happened?
I got my medical
98?
in '98, and so all that time from '98 on, I would smoke pot, and so I wouldn't throw up from the pain.
From take your pick of what the reason is.
So I can't take narcotics, but he said I could. So for 2 years I did, and it was bad, throwing up blood, liver and pancreas ready to shut down. So I got all pissed off, and I told them I was all done taking their meds. Well, all of a sudden my wife comes home from work, she's crying, telling me, you didn't throw all those out, right? And I was just ready to, and I had a whole cupboard full. I'm pissed. I'm like, I'm done. And she goes, yeah, I'm okay. I'll support you smoking pot. That'll help you. But they called me and said, you will die if you don't wean yourself off all this meds. That was never on the cards when I went to this pain clinic, okay? That was bullshit, little fine prints that you can't, I don't like this, but you got to wean it. It took almost 45 days for the amount of Oxycontin or whatever they're called, all the heavy opioids, and that, you know, I didn't. And so the funniest thing that set me off, where I was telling everybody to get f***ed and I'm not taking this anymore, I answered the telephone. And remember my joke, I'll know you're not a telemarketer, about my last name? I was so out of it on pills, a fucking telemarketer called. I'm human, okay? And when they called, they asked me, how do I pronounce my name? And I was telling them, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm done. And that's what snapped me out of taking the narcotics. I didn't want to, I was out of it, you know, and I got duped by a telemarketer, you know, come on. So
And that was the trigger, you stopped.
that was the trigger where I stopped, and my wife came home, and we got it a plan with the doctors to wean off after 45 days. And I used cannabis the whole time, so I was done in 30. And I've been on cannabis the whole time.
Saved your life. I heard you say it.
Yes, it did. I'm a real medical patient. I got Social Security the first time. I don't know too many people that do. Social Security disability. They told me to go to a pain clinic. So, you know, we're going to try to change the world, protect medical. I think rec should be in every state, you know, but the medical and the scientists, let's if it's keeping me alive, and I'm not a doctor, I flunked science class twice. I got kicked out. So the world's gonna hold on my ass to do this? So I'm surrounding myself with scientists, doctors, lawyers, people that can really put their foot down now and make a difference. Because there's no medical reason why I'm alive.
Considering all that, Uncle Pete is now dedicated to changing other people's lives through cannabis care. His Uncle Pete's Relief Family Ranch and Farm grows it, manufactures it, and of course sells it. Best of all, he's surrounded by his family who take care of Uncle Pete's relief business when Uncle Pete is taking care of fellow patients.
Okay, if you don't want to, you don't have to, hon. But when you get here, I'll take care of you, okay? I definitely believe in CBD.
Yeah.
I've seen it straight solo use with children and adults that have grand mal seizures, epileptic.
Yep.
It works.
Right.
People that have joint pains, injuries that need like an aspirin boost, it really works. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it.
Right.
I find with high pain tolerance patients, I had a lady call last night, and her husband came down because it was CBD, so he brought it for her. And it was actually a Cbd Elixir, and it's from Maine. It's a full spectrum, like the Rick Simpson oil, but it's CBD.
Yep.
And it's a 1 ounce, you know, and there's droppers. And so she just wants to feel better. And so for this example, I'm having to take a full dropper full 3 times a day, and to call me when the ball is done to see if she sees any improvement at all, anything at all. Mm-hmm. And if there is any improvement, if it's a home run, great, we stay with this, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's not a home run, but it's there, then we'll boost it up to a THC Cbd Elixir, and then now we're adding THC to it, just like what we said.
Right.
And we'll go from there. We'll see how she feels, what's happening to her, She'll get a doctor's note before she does the THC. She already said if this is the route, she'll do this. Yeah. So we're just working with someone to make her feel better.
Giving his patients the opportunity to feel better with cannabis drives this caregiver, but that's not all. He's also a champion political advocate for cannabis. Uncle Pete wanted to make sure no one who was on an organ donor list was denied receiving that life-saving organ because they had used cannabis. That was actually a law in Maine until Uncle Pete and some of his friends got to work on changing all that.
So what was happening is people were getting kicked off the transplant list. We had to go behind the scenes and meet every state senator, every representative that would just listen to us. And by the time they're done, they're crying because they know if they don't support this bill, someone's dying. And so there was really no holding back. Because we did all these yes on one, I'm voting yes, because we believed in it. We didn't want anybody to die, and we couldn't say it online like, you dummies, you have to vote for this. If you smoke pot, you have to vote for this. And we couldn't say any of that. So we're like, I'm voting yes, we're protecting medical, and we had to change it. We had to change the law. And so when that guy told me I was wrong and we weren't in the greatest of medical programs, it was nauseating. So we had to do 18 months behind the scenes to meet Deborah Sanderson, Senator Brakey, Representative Sanderson, Senator Brakey. They did so much. So many people, it's hard to list them all. Catherine and Glenn Lewis, they're real growers. They do a lot for Maine. Paul McCarrier does a lot. And we just joined forces so we could change this law. And they had no idea, no one knew that if you got sick, you could not get an organ. But it's not like they're going to advertise it, And for Maine medical side, you were right at first. You were technically right with the data you have. You did not want to waste an organ. A human life is way too precious. So when this all came out that we couldn't get organs, well, it's Maine. Everybody's like, well, screw this. I'm pulling my medical card. No. What happens if you're in the same car with your son or daughter and everybody gets killed but one, and you're all related and you can give those organs, but you're all pissed and you killed the organ donor thing? Because you could give them out, you just couldn't receive them. So I had to go in Augusta and beg people not to kill their organ donor cards. And yes, they're right, and we are too. And I had them call every legislator in the state, and it was really good at us, the Civic Center. Call every legislator, we had the phone numbers, and it was a big stage. And I said, tell them we're gonna vote every one of them fuckers out. And they shit. And they realized, like, little old ladies are calling, little old men, people retired, people working, doctors, lawyers, professionals, media, people from out of state, scientists that were real, that I knew this was right, that medical's staying. If medical marijuana is in the mainstream, the human lifespan will increase by 10 years, easy.
Well, only time and more research will tell if that's true. Uncle Pete's life has been saved and changed for decades, but now he's living his best life in Maine, surrounded by his family during this historic time.
So since 1999, the state of Maine voted for cannabis for medical marijuana, or they call it marijuana, or whatever they want to call it. I'm just happy we can be a part of this industry. So I wasn't in the industry back then. I had a neck injury, and so throughout the years of understanding the damage I have, cannabis is helping, and I was looking into it. In 2010, I looked into getting my medical card because the voters, a referendum in 2009 allowed caregivers, mom and pop growers that could tailor medicine just to you. Dispensaries are out there, but there were waiting lines. There was like rations, and nah, this is Maine, we can figure it out. I went to a caregiver, and it was awesome. I like to say his name, it's Fred Kessler, and you helped save my life, buddy. Really good man. He came to deliver one day because one of my problems is my arms go numb and I can't use them for a spinal cord injury. So I was going nowhere, just sitting at a table with the arms kind of coming back to life for a couple days, and he kept asking me, do you own this house? Because he delivered some cannabis to me. It was upsetting, Of course, stoners can have houses. And he started laughing, and that was my first conversation to become a Maine caregiver. He felt I'd be very good for the program and for the industry. Nice man. And so I looked into it. I had him come over to tell my wife. My wife is, you know, a 5-foot little beauty, but she's a big woman in stature. And she's like, we're not drug dealers. And she gave him the rundown one side or the other. And when she realized that this was a brand new industry, that we could do this legally, then that was the game changer, because she saw how sick I was. And that's what started Uncle Pete's, you know, just from a caregiver delivering to me when I was sick. And
now you're giving back.
Yes.
To others.
So we found
the legal,
yes,
the legal framework that is existing in the state of Maine.
Well, the legal framework was fragile.
Right.
And like there was no tax code for caregivers. That's a kiss of death. No matter how long you think you're going, there's just no future. And there wasn't any more dispensary licenses in Maine. There were four dispensary licenses with, I believe, 8 stores or whatever it was. It's just not enough for the state of Maine. So we realized there was no tax code for caregivers. That was done. So we worked very hard with our attorney, Revad Ewell and Lamb Associates in Maine, to work with Maine State Revenue to see what should be done, not what could be done, but what has to be done. And it worked. We have tax codes now for caregivers, and that was really important to my wife coming on as Uncle Pete's Relief and her patients, and same with my son and my daughter-in-law for the Tranch Ranch. You can't just do this half-ass, whether you're sick or not. You have to do it right.
Right. If you're going to run a business, you're going to run a business.
There was no business structure for this.
Right.
And then we were seeing the dispensaries, and I'm sticking up for you guys. You guys are getting screwed. You were hammered on every aspect and regulations, which you should have, and they were really lackadaisical here. And the majority of the caregivers are awesome. And most of them weeded out that were terrible, but there was no regulations for the terrible ones. So we'd all kind of police it ourselves and call them out, but that's not really how you run an industry. This is like the greatest community in the country, this green community in Maine. It's awesome.
The way life should be, or the way buds should be?
The way buds should be, definitely.
So if I walk in, I make an appointment with you.
Yes, you have to. In our city ordinance, you have to always have a scheduled appointment, and rightfully so, because we're not public. We're you know, you have to have appointment only.
Right.
And that's where you can get the better care, instead of 4 or 5 people coming in here, and maybe you just had, like we talked about earlier, that unimaginable doctor's visit where you're just horrified. You don't need a public building with tie-dyes and the music and people just coming in to feel better, to medicate and then go out and raise hell. You're going to a place to possibly extend your life, or to at least make yourself comfortable for the end of it. And so that's the difference between medical and rec. We don't try to, as you buy your medicine that you need, that we find out, because there's so many different ways, from Rick Simpson oil capsules to tinctures, and we'll go over all the differences, but there's literally hundreds of ways to dispense, you know, there really is.
So I walk in, I've got chronic pain, I've got my card. Oh, by the way, I do have my Massachusetts card, which, by the way, is perfectly legal to use in the state of Maine now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so before this, you would have to get permission from your state and my state for $50 for 90 days.
Right.
So for us to do a sale, I take your driver's license valid, I take your Massachusetts state card, and then we do a designation form after for your privacy. And then you can come in. So for 15 days, you're allowed 2.5 ounces. And I believe when bio-tracking comes in, they'll keep track of you through the whole state, which is fine.
Regulations, tracking, keeping meticulous records for patients are all part of what this caregiver in Maine is all about. So how many square feet do you have?
The whole house is 42.
Yeah, but with the growing?
Oh, under 1,000. We stay under 1,000, yeah, to be efficient.
Under 1,000 square feet, and you're able to...
All my grows are, combined are under 1,000 on purpose.
the message that we continue to come back to is this is medicine.
Yes.
Everybody has a different effect with the medicine.
Yes.
And every body is different because everybody's endocannabinoid system is different.
Yes.
Everybody's tolerance to THC is going to be different if they decide to take THC at all. Do we have CBD only capsules too?
We can offer those CBD only capsules.
So what's happening is you're actually a compounder. You know the old days of compounding medicine, where they used to make their own little aspirins and whatever the heck, right? So you do the same thing.
I'm telling the lady that makes these what I'm going on. If you come in here and we design them just for you, we will tailor them made for you. And if they're too strong or they're not strong enough, we'll increase or decrease.
Right.
And just kind of find out where you can function back in society and not be a drone.
Right.
And not be in pain because of what disabled you in the first place.
Right.
You know.
So there's a individualized.
It has. Yes, it is, and it's a you have to be very responsible to do this. You don't have a right to burn a joint wherever you want just because it's legal.
Right. Or it's actually illegal to burn a joint in public in Massachusetts.
Yep.
Even though for 80 years, even during Prohibition, plenty of people burned joints in public in Massachusetts. Not that I was around all 80 years, but you get what I'm saying.
Might have helped to that.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you just you have to be responsible and do the right thing. The Freedom Rally was a perfect example.
Right.
We all smoked. You know, speaking for myself, I smoked 1 or 2 joints there, back to back, and had a great time seeing all my friends.
Right.
It's the way for commodity, knowing that we were right. We weren't wrong. We did this wrong. We did everything right, and we all still have the businesses. And we can just see each other and just kind of reflect, you know. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's
a new normal.
So in Massachusetts, what are there going to be, social clubs?
They are trying. They have a pilot program, I believe, in Uxbridge for social clubs. I will tell you, I have had some experience with social clubs now that I have visited the island of Jamaica.
Nice.
And it was quite an experience, let's just say.
I was just a big social club when I went. That was awesome.
Yeah, it depends on where you are and all this. But, I mean, look, we're in a whole new era right now. As I say all the time, it's a whole new world of weed, okay? And we're figuring out the ways to incorporate it into our world, into our 21st century society.
Well put.
Without making it into as big a deal as a lot of people think it should be, which it isn't.
It isn't. That's what regulations are for. The Green Gold logo is pretty awesome. Again, all that's eyeballed. We have to always put underneath it Green Gold, so Gucci's cool with this and they're not mad at us. We didn't want to ever come across.
Did you talk to Gucci?
We've had our attorneys.
Attorneys talk.
Yeah, so what they did was to make sure we don't sell anything with just GG, and we had no idea. I didn't own any Gucci stuff, and my wife, my son, we're from Maine, you know, and maybe there is Gucci in Maine, but I've been sick for a long time. There was no Gucci in my budget.
Sure, in Cape Elizabeth.
Okay, so not me. So we had no idea. So the agreement is we always put Green Gold under our licensed GG, and then they're cool with it. But there's no reason if we go to Jamaica, I just don't get it, and we are going to change this. If you go to Jamaica and you want an Uncle Pete's Relief strain that you've gotten here, because we've had interviews.
Right.
Why isn't there a shop there where you can get international cannabis?
Right.
That's not hurting anybody, not trying to overtake the market. I'm small.
Right.
But certainly this should be looked at. And same here, we should be able to have an international shelf of marijuana cigarettes, different flavors for you to enjoy.
We're looking at like a microbrewery. We're looking
absolutely.
at wines, different wines like Napa Valley.
In a tasting area, in a place.
Exactly right. By the way, at the dispensary, there was a tasting room. I'll admit it.
That must have been awesome.
It was awesome.
That was cool.
It was awesome
Absolutely.
because it was at night. I was done. I'd worked 12 hours that day. It was a perfect thing to end.
Oh, I hope you found a comfy chair and just melted. That's what I would have done.
It was a lot. It was quite an experience. All right, so I get the different doses. Okay. I get the capsules.
Okay.
Walk me through. Behind you is your menu.
Yes.
Walk us through your menu a little bit and talk to us about the different strains that you have. Everything you grow is here.
Yeah.
You have a 3-to-1, I see, CBD.
Yes, we do.
And you actually have some pre-rolls that are 3-to-1 CBD?
No, those are straight
I see.
THC.
I see, yeah, I see it.
Because those really are, people just don't come in to want to pre-roll a CBD in my shop. My patients are all more heavy towards THC.
Yep.
I am too.
Right.
And so if there was a big market for it, of course I'd have it for my patients available to make them feel better.
Well, walk us through the different
Okay,
different things that
so you
have.
see how unless you're colorblind, and one of my buddies that works here is colorblind, so every now and then you'll see like a blue in here and he just misses it, so we all shit on him. But unless you're colorblind, what we have here is green and red and purple. So the green is for hybrids, which are combinations of sativa or indica. Yep. And then we have sativas, and then and then we have purple for indicas. So it's kind of just a quick board to look at. Yep. To understand what you're looking for. And then we'll narrow it down, like say your stomach hurts and you're vomiting a lot. Well, you're going to need an indica. Yep. Or a hybrid. And then we'll kind of see which ones work for you and make sure we have it on hand for you.
Yeah. So a lot of people are now kind of poo-pooing the sativa and indica thing because of the individual effect on everybody, so that a sativa won't have the same effect on one person as it might another. Do you buy into that? I do to some extent, but yeah. there are mostly similar traits chemically. There's like oh, I forget the name, but they make the difference between sativa and indica. I have the chart over there. I just don't want to say the name wrong. Okay. But there chemically is a difference. Okay. So when you get into like distillate cartridges, chemically it's changed. So that effect isn't going to do it to you. It's more the THC in there. Yeah. But right here in the flowering, and that's what the lure for the state of Maine, and I will throw this out to all the growers in Maine, we truly have some of the best flower in the world. It's the water. Everybody can go indoors, outdoors. Maine rocks. We have mountains, we have rivers, we have springs. Mine's on a spring. My well is on a 3-foot spring, and we've never ran out. We don't have to do anything but open from the tap. So the lure of Maine and the different tastes is everything. It is everything. We feel we have some of the finest buds in the world, and we've been told that as well. So what we do is make sure that the Agent Orange smells like Agent Orange. And this hybrid right alone right here helps veterans just to sleep, shut their brain off at night. That's simple. They may have trigger words the next day that will bring them back where they are, but at least there'll be a fresh brain from the night before, which is awesome. Because before there was no getting away from the dreams. Right. How do you come up with the names? I know a lot of them are based on where the seed comes from, but how do you come up with these names? Where do the names, how do they originate? So pretty much, they're all just different people that have combined different strands together and come up with some really outlandish names. We don't sell like cat piss. I'm not having an end-of-life patient paddle care come down here and I'm going to have cat piss written up here. Some of the doctors we worked with in Oregon and scientists, they're coming up with a DNA coding system. So if you travel and say let's go with Agent Orange because it's on the top of the list, that's your go-to when you come here. You can do your thing now and you can be productive. Oh my God, you got to go to Florida for 10 days. How sick are you going to be? You can't bring that. So where's the dispensary? See if they'll take your Maine or Massachusetts card, right? Because that's what we're working on. Right. Yep. So if that's in play and you go into the dispensary and they have Agent Orange, is it really Agent Orange? Right. They don't know. They're growing from seeds that say Agent Orange. Where's the DNA code testing? So there's just a letter on here in a number system. We're fine with whatever you want to call your cannabis. But we really want to make it so now we are allowed travel interstate all over the world. People can go through their strains, so it can be brought down into distillate, so it can be brought down into rosin, resin, crumbles, and different types of scientifically made into capsules, so we can have your tailored made for you, which is what this should be. Right. And that's my whole thinking for all this. I have to use this every day. I was smoking 12 joints a day. My throat hurt bad, and my medicine, my cured meds, and we kick ass. I had to look into doing concentrates and capsules. And I have to be careful because I have a bad pancreas and liver. I can't digest oils. So it's a fine line with
how can I medicate with transdermal patches, which is awesome now. And then I use medibles and I use concentrates. Really smoke joints unless we're out and socially having a great time.
Uncle Pete is obviously having a great time after 3 near-death experiences, helping to change an unfair organ donor law, and caring for patients. All have defined his life so far. But his biggest highlight is living his life, running a business surrounded by his family.
Well, yeah, my wife Tina, I love you. You do all the work, okay? I told you I'd say it.
She who must be obeyed.
Well, you know what? Quite remarkable for her to quit a job to keep me out of the hospital, you know? And she left a good insurance company to take care of me. And she realized I couldn't do the transplant and I couldn't do the seedlings. My arms are damaged and I couldn't grow. And when she realized that, my son and my daughter-in-law came on, and they all came on to be awesome. And we really have good, clean products because they're farmers, you know, and they have a passion to keep me alive. Good family. My whole family does this with Uncle Pete's Relief and the Tranch Ranch. And we believe in this. This is right, you know. It's not about just smoking a joint all the time, you know. It's fun, like it's fun. But try having to do 12 of those a day. It's not fun. The smile goes away. When your whole family quits their job to keep you alive, you don't just take this like, what the hell, you know? I made a promise to them I'd change this, and I have been. But all credit to them, they type everything. You know, when I go to the State House, I'll tell them what I want to say, and then I walk away, because if I'm over them, no, it's not what I want to say, they'll just shut up and let me do this. My wife and my son, they're awesome. And there's our attack donkey, Chucky.
Attack donkey?
Yeah, I love that. He's a little guy. He's like an Angus bull.
So how big is all your property?
We own 5 acres, and my son owns 4 acres. He came back from Kansas and built this house over there, pulling oil. So one son is home, and we see our grandkids.
Oh, it's great.
It's a home run. So we really are a team here. Whether caregivers are under the same business or not, we have our own tax IDs. We're all one fighting to stay alive. So like you'll see tomorrow, I'll see other caregivers, and they're like, hey, because we're all fighting together. And again, like I tell everybody in the cannabis industry that actually sells retail, grows, sells wholesale, has patients. A guy that I learned a lot of, he told me, he had a question for me because he figured I'd come up with a smart ass answer. He says, how much cannabis was sold in Maine last year? And he goes, or in the country legally. And I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, you know, kind of giving it a shot here. And he goes, can I stop you? I'm like, yeah. He goes, every bit of it. Every bit of it was sold. Everybody sold it. We're in an industry where there's a demand for people to feel better, whether you're sick or not. We're in an industry where alcohol is not getting it done, and people are turning towards marijuana for cigarettes, for inebriation, that are healthy. That's okay. We're changing each one. We're right. We changed everything, and this is the days we're living in, I guess.
And you have more than one grow house?
Right here? No, just here.
Just here.
Just here for now.
Yeah.
You know, eventually I'll expand.
Yep.
But for now, I can take care of our patients.
Okay. Cool.
There was nothing like coming home, you know, and I'm glad I live here. I really do. I love this state.
The way buds should be. That Uncle Pete, he's a great guy. Pete Tranchmontaigne. Uncle Pete's Relief is his caregiver company. Sanford, Maine is his home. Green Gold is the clothing line and logo. The way buds should be in the great state of Maine, the way life should be. And Uncle Pete, he's working on life number 3. That's it for In the Weeds this week. I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We Talk Now, We Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media. We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. And as you can tell, I'm in the greatest sports city in America, Boston, Massachusetts. Joining me from the other coast, from Oregon, from Eugene, Oregon, is Lance Kreck. And he is the host of another podcast called Hemp 101. Lance, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and joining us here for a little chit chat. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Trying to survive over here and on the West Coast.
So I understand that you had a hemp store and it has now fallen victim to the COVID-19 pandemic. Is that accurate?
Yes, unfortunately, that is correct.
How did that all happen and how long have you been in business?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. At the time, I went into business with my ex-wife now. Was my wife at the time. I was getting out of the Army. I still had about a year left on my contract. I was stationed down in Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, with 7 Special Forces Group, one of the operational groups for the United States Army Special Forces Green Berets. I was there for 7 years. I was coming up on the final year of my contract. I was injured in a parachuting routine operation, training exercise. And I had to have 2 hip surgeries, so I was medically retired. But before then, around that time, Florida was going for Amendment 2. This was right around 2016. So cannabis was really starting to kind of get some momentum across the country. Certain states were recreational. I think there was only like 2 or 3 at the time, I believe. But med was really starting to kick off, and you could see a lot of the kids and the parents getting relief from the cannabis. And it really struck a chord with me because I was a brand new parent at the time, and I was fortunate enough to have a healthy child, a healthy son. I have 2 kids now. And so I wanted to kind of, pitch in wherever I could. And then with the medical aspect that is cannabis and now hemp, it's really got a large future, I would say, in with the veterans, with the pain and getting them off of the plethora of prescription pills and opioids. And so we were going to go for one of the licenses in Florida once they legalized it. But I mean, if you pay attention to the cannabis regulations across the country, Florida probably had the largest or the steepest requirements for a license. And I think they wanted 5 million liquid or 10 million liquid. I can't remember the specifics. I've kind of obviously pivoted since then. Then found out what hemp was. Hemp was starting to come onto the scene with the Stanley Brothers and Charlotte's Web, and found out about hemp. And we didn't need a license. The barrier to entry was a heck of a lot smaller, and so we pivoted over there, and we went to the West Coast. Figured it was probably the best area. It was close for my wife's family at the time. The kids could be closer to their grandparents on her side. And we didn't want to go to California because the taxes and the traffic. And we didn't want to go to Washington because that's where my in-laws were. And so we decided Oregon, and then we did some research and picked Eugene, with the university. It's not the size of Portland or anything like that. Central in the state, and they're very sympathetic to hemp and cannabis. So we landed in Eugene, opened up a store. This was all pre-Farm Bill. So the country was not on par with where we were, unfortunately. So I think that we were really early to market. And it was only a small family investment that we had. Getting the brand recognition out there was good. And then unfortunately, a divorce happened in the middle of that. So my wife, business partner at the time, had to seek employment elsewhere. And I was still stuck in Florida with the Army, finishing out my contract before I moved up to Oregon to take over the business that had been closed for a couple months. Kind of, revived that brand, and then COVID hit. And so, with already a struggling business through personal, struggles and whatnot, it just, that was the final nail in the coffin.
So to speak. Be careful of that one, I guess, right? So the hippie hemp farm in Eugene, Oregon is alive or not alive?
No, it's not. The brand is still kind of alive. It's more so just loyal customers that still know that we have some good oil from a local brand, TJ's. They're a local cannabis brand. They're in a few other states. I think they're in Washington, Vegas, or Nevada, and California, as well as Oregon. So it's a pretty large brand that's spanning a couple states, and that's our best seller. And leftover inventory, and then textiles, t-shirts, and stuff that we have from the store. This is a leftover shirt. This is actually a Patagonia hemp shirt from their spring 2020 line. So just leftover stuff here and there.
It's amazing to me that the products that can be made out of hemp, the variety of products, and I'm not just talking about cannabis and CBD and all that, but your shirt, a house, a boat, a car, anything really can be made out of this substance, and yet very few people understand that at all. How much of an educational thing do you have to do when you talk to people, when you explain to them that you're in the hemp industry?
Still, with the passage of the Farm Bill, there's still a steep learning curve for, the mass consumption, if you will. Mostly on the textile side, that's the largest learning curve that is kind of, keeping everything from going forward. But, with the rubber, the DuPonts, the fossil fuels, et cetera, the lobbyists, they have the upper hand when it comes to lobbying and policies that are in their favor, and it's also a plant, and it's not as rigid, if you will, when it comes to the aura of what a plant can do in form or in regards to manufacturing, auto manufacturing, textiles, hempcrete, animal bedding, feed, etc. So there's still a small learning curve. I think that there's a lot of brands that are really starting to help get that infrastructure in place. The biggest one that a lot of people are kind of keeping their eye on right now is the textile side, because a lot of the textiles for fiber for clothes, whether it be beanies, socks, shirts, etc., most of it was coming from overseas. Romania, China, India, they've been doing it for centuries. And, the United States was kind of in that arena for a while until, everyone knows the demonization of cannabis and the passage of certain policies under certain presidents, control or, terms, if you will. And so, it's kind of coming back to the forefront as a viable option. And with, climate change, whether you believe in it or not, that's not for me to say. It has a lot of benefits that, just other than the textiles and the food and the fiber, that can really help. And a lot of people are starting to come on board with that.
You mentioned a lot in there about the history of the plant, and for those who don't understand, it was the DuPonts, the Hearsts of the 1930s, 20s, and 30s that really funded the original DEA that turned the cannabis sativa plant into that evil weed, if you will. And because they felt that hemp was going to impact the paper industry. And that's where all that money came from. That's where they were. Hearst obviously was in the publishing world. But anyway, let's get back to Oregon for a second, because I'm always curious, especially when I talk to people from the West Coast. I am from the East Coast, and while I have visited California a few times, I have never visited Washington State or Oregon. And as a golfer, Bandon Dunes is on my bucket list. It is one of the most outstanding golf courses in the world, and one of these days I'll get an opportunity to play it. I hope, if I live through tomorrow, because I only count on 24 hours these days, especially with COVID. And this has to be a very challenging time for you. You've gone through a divorce already. You seem to be very young and a nice young man. You've got a military background, which means you understand the importance of discipline. And I'm guessing you also understand the importance of adapting and improvising in whatever situation you're in. So now that COVID is hit, what are your plans for your next step in the world of hemp?
Oh, actually, it's very interesting because this was almost a blessing in disguise. My plans in hemp are with the podcast and also the YouTube channel associated with that, education, awareness, advocacy, if you will, from that digital media side, but also working with this is a fairly recent development, developing a cannabis brand in Las Vegas. So it's going to be kind of like Black Rifle Coffee for cannabis. And so whoever's out there listening, you can try and take it. I don't care, but we're coming for you. With Vegas opening back up, slowly but surely. And it's very unfortunate to see what has happened in the industry based on, the looting and the rioting, but also with COVID and all. I mean, cannabis was deemed essential and everybody knows that. And so that's really brought the plant to the forefront of a lot of people's minds as, wait a second, okay, let's talk about cannabis. And then hemp, it goes hand in hand. So with the podcast, working with a company out of India, I can't name drop specifically because we're still working out the details, to do a video series on the Indian cannabis market, working with political leaders, celebrity leaders, just that type of market that is India, kind of the sleeping giant of the cannabis world, because it's only a matter of time before cannabis is internationally legal, and there's no regulations on border crossings and whatnot. That's a really, kind of playing the cards close to the chest on that one. So Vegas and India is really on my forefront, and then just kind of, spreading the word and doing the video series outside of the podcast, kind of like a Casey Neistat vlog style hemp review / tech review, kind of following the journey of the hemp industry and the cannabis industries as we go forward, because it's a brand new industry. Nobody's going to get this time, again to do it, unless there's a new industry that comes up, in the near future, or, next lifetime for, my kids and, generations behind me. So, just trying to ride the wave and just see where hemp's going, because I mean, we can tell Patagonia's got hemp. Lego's got hemp. Lego has announced that they're going to be making all of their plastics out of hemp plastics by 2030. So there's a lot of fun things happening in the industry. It's already disrupting so many industries, and I'm here to pretty much provide that journey for the masses.
Well, you certainly have the passion for it, Lance. That's the most important thing. You mentioned two things. One about cannabis, if you will, becoming an essential product. In Massachusetts, the governor did not see it that way when it came to the adult use recreational world. Let's not get into that on this show. But at some point, if you want to sit down with me, I can explain what goes on with that. But you talked about the protests that have been going on. We are going to date this a little bit. A lot of times I like to do evergreen, but because of what's been going on in the United States over the last 7 to 10 days, and my goodness gracious, take it back to 2.5 months. I feel like I've been in this cage for 2.5 months. The thing that I'm taking away, and yes, there have been looting, and yes, it looks like the MedMen stores in California all had to close, and the local dispensary here in Boston, they too, after 4 years of waiting, finally getting open, getting shut down because of COVID, because the governor decided to make adult use recreational non-essential. And now he's reopened, and what happens within the first week of them reopening? Bang, they get looted and they get, not destroyed, but certainly, $100,000 worth of product is gone.
Oh, yeah.
Every single one of the companies that has suffered from looting or vandalism is basically has the same message. And I'm so enthused about this message. And that message is basically they merchandise and things can be replaced. Okay, racism needs to be eradicated, and we have to at some point recognize that the people who have been most affected by the wars on drugs, those people of color, really have been horribly treated by the white man in this country. Now, you come from a military background. The military, I know, has always embraced others. Anyone who wants to volunteer for the military is embraced. And I give the military a lot of respects and props for that. But I go back to what I was saying about the positives that can come out of a negative. Are you one who also believes that everything's for a reason and that we will somehow move forward, whether it's through the ballot box or just through this movement that we're seeing all over the United States?
I believe so. I'm usually I'm more so than not a realist, but I'm also an optimist. So I'm a firm believer in society moving forward together for the right reasons. And I think whether you think that this whole thing was a conspiracy theory with COVID, mass coordinations, et cetera, and then now the looting and the rioting with bricks being staged all across the country. There's a lot to really take in and kind of, formulate an opinion. And it's really just kind of like a mass confusion, if you will. Nobody really knows what to think. Facebook is saying one thing, the president's saying another on Twitter. Twitter's saying they're going to shut them down. It's like, okay, what can we really focus on to affect change? Because everybody's entitled to their First Amendment opinion. And a lot of countries are really paying attention to this. I had Abhishek Mohan, the CEO of Hemp Street from over in Southeast Asia on the show, on the Hemp 101 podcast last week. And all eyes are on us right now. There's a lot going on. It's an election year. Cannabis in some parts of the country were deemed essential, but I can see why Boston didn't really want to capitalize on that, because they didn't want to be seen as profiteering. They didn't want to say the recreational side is where we're going to get our money, where we're going to get our taxes. I can see them doing it for the right reasons, but it really limited access for a lot of people, which is unfortunate because, different states are doing it differently across the country. And so we're all kind of like, we're all in the same roller coaster right now. Different states are learning from different states. Different things are changing based on policy, based on who's in office, and it's an election year. So there's a lot that we need to really kind of digest right now, especially with the election only a few months away. I think that's really going to be a tip. In my personal opinion, I think that's going to be a huge tipping point for the country, because Donald Trump or President Trump in the beginning said that he was going to leave it up to the states, and the states have been doing that. They've been left alone, and it's still legal. And he's coming up to the end of his first term, and for him to get reelected, I think that he's either going to end the war or legalize cannabis, or just go forward and leave everything as a status quo. I think that if he really wanted to get reelected and unite the masses, he would do those two things, because there's so much confusion going on here in the States that the foreign policy of the United States can literally do whatever they want because nobody's paying attention, except for COVID, except for a global pandemic, because, it is what it is. People can say what they want about, the New World Order, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you have to put two and two together. It's easy to kind of go down the rabbit hole with some of those things, but I think that with cannabis, whether the states and the cities were getting their share of the monetization of the plant through taxes, for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, they still left it open to the people, and that shows that that is a viable option going forward. And if that is a viable option going forward, Bob Marley said it best. I mean, I hate to sound all woo-woo, but he said the plant's going to be the healing of the nation, and we're already starting to see that. Industries are adopting, plant-based products, whether it's hemp or other products in their business models. Cannabis is a viable option for entrepreneurial routes. Cannabis is actually getting taught in, Western medicine institutions. It's fascinating to see where we're actually going. And so I think a lot of it is going to be kind of determined in the ballot boxes, like you said. But I think that with everyone so divided right now, but also so unified, people are seeing through the BS and the false flags when it comes to that side of the house. And people actually want to move forward because they know that there's a global pandemic. Whether that's true or not, it really is. I see a lot of message of unity because cops are fed up. The students are fed up. They've been through school shootings for the last decade, longer than that. And putting two and two together whenever you think about that sort of thing. Like, okay, how come there's not been a school shooting, or how come ISIS isn't in the news anymore? Like, are we still at war? Like, there's a lot of things that are still kind of floating out there in limbo that I think really people have to look forward to a closure on those topics.
So it sounds like you believe, as do many of the people I talk to that are cannabis advocates, that the plant can be the healer. The plant can employ. The plant can drive revenue and turn it back into tax revenue to change some of the things that these cities, towns, and even our states have to deal with now. You're pretty positive that this all can happen over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, or up to you even mentioned 10 years from now.
Yes, I'm a firm believer in that. We've had some help with Canada legalizing it across the country. A couple of years ago, however long ago it was, not really. I mean, there's so much that has gone on in the industry, but just the key things that it's been deemed essential during a global pandemic. It's making money for taxes, and people can actually see that the plant is being used for the right things. Crime, some statistics say that crime has gone down. Some statistics in certain states like Colorado has said that with passage of cannabis policy, vehicular accidents have gone down, vehicular deaths, et cetera. So there's more good happening from the plant than bad. And I think that, with the pandemic, it really brought that aura that is cannabis, no pun intended, if you will. I guess it's not really a pun. It's really brought cannabis to the forefront, and it's almost, it cannot be a political subject anymore.
But it is. I mean, it can't be.
True.
Yet, until there's actually a movement in the Republican-controlled Senate, we are at a tremendous stalemate, and that freaks me out a little bit. But then again, I think I'm at least 20, if not 30 years older than you. So I'm more worried about your children, okay? Maybe my child, who's going to be 30 in September. But for the most part, this is a long-term process. But you do see what a lot of people see as it's like the aligning of the stars almost, right? That you have the pandemic, you've had this issue with climate change, and now you've got this product out there that really, Bob Marley, may he rest in peace, may I sing his songs, it is about the plant. I got to meet a Rastafarian and interviewed a Rastafarian last year, and he explained to me why it is that the plant can be the healer. And look, I'm a meat and potatoes guy, okay? But I totally respect the vegans of the world. And I understand that a plant-based diet can actually be beneficial to many humans. So again, plant medicine and plant nutrients. You are one who also supports this, or you wouldn't be in the hemp industry in the first place, right?
Exactly, 100%. Because going back to just not only Bob Marley, around the same era, JFK was a cannabis user in the White House, openly on the lawns. He was using it for his conditions that he had. This was before it was illegal, and so you used to be able to pay taxes with it. And I think that right now, I want to go on record as saying, cannabis legalization, whether it's regulated at the end of this time or not, I don't think it's going to happen. But I believe that cannabis legalization is going to happen either right before Trump gets reelected, at the end of his first term, or his second term, to ensure a follow-on Republican in the presidency, or Joe Biden's going to do it at the end of his first term. So I believe, I'm a firm believer that legalization for cannabis is going to be within the next 5 years.
Wow. I don't even want to talk about the possibilities of reelecting this guy, because the first, in my world, okay, to be a president, you must be a leader, and I just don't see that happening. So anyway, that's how I look at it, Lance, Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about democracy, whether you think it's beautiful or not. I think that the United States is fairly new. It's a new country in the grand scheme of things in the global arena. So we've weathered a lot. We've weathered a civil war. We've weathered two world wars, going on the longest war ever. I think 4 years in the grand scheme of things has divided so many people. But I think at the end of the day, everyone really knows that we're getting sick and tired of the same, 5 or 6 issues that politicians can really affect. But I hate to say it, it is the older generational politics, the career politicians that are the ones that are holding a lot of this up, because they have that grip of power and they don't want to let it go until it's either A, for the party, or B, for them. It's time for them to pass on, rest their soul, unfortunately. So abortion, obviously civil rights, women's rights, same-sex marriage, the whole gambit of what these politicians run on. It's like, if we solve those things, what's next? We can actually move forward as a society. We can start regulating the auto industry a lot more, with miles per gallon, increasing efficiency, and decreasing greenhouse gases, etc. Like actual problems that can be solved, by starting a plan today, and not worried about abortion because of religion or personal views, that has been going on for decades. I mean, it's a lot. It's very simple, but I'm not in politics. I would honestly like to be in politics at some point. Not me personally running, but behind the scenes, strategist or something like that. Whether Democrat or Republican doesn't really matter, right now. It just depends on, the person that you're getting behind, getting them in office, making sure that they're there for the right reasons, whether that's at the city level, county level, state level, or federal level. It doesn't really matter. Getting involved in politics, I think, like you said, is key. Beating them at the ballots, because, the generations are growing up. Obviously the kids that were in high school that were, under that had a lot of the massive, school shootings, unfortunately. Gun control, they're going to start voting a lot more than, I would venture to say, my generation when we were younger and up and coming, because the media and, information is at our fingertips. So we have that educated, we can have that awareness about what's going on a grander scale than what we could just based on what the TV and the print was giving us. So, it's an interesting time, and it's an awesome time, not only for entrepreneurs in the hemp and the cannabis industry, but also for politics, because if you don't turn on to politics, politics is going to turn on you.
Very good point. And I think that's a great way to kind of wrap things up here, Lance. And in the words of Terrence Floyd, the brother of the late George Floyd, he said something that was very powerful, and it was one word, and it's a 4-letter word. And that 4-letter word is vote. And that is so important. As someone who has fought for this country, I salute you, and I respect the fact that you were able to do that, and you always will be respected in our community now. So again, thank you for your service, Lance Crack. Thank you so much for your time. How do we find your Hempcast again?
So we're on all major podcast platforms. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, but it's based out of the Anchor app. So you can just Google Hemp 101 Podcast. We're the only one out there. It's on Anchor, Spotify, wherever you find your major podcasts. Twitter, Instagram, Hemp 101 Podcast, Facebook, Hemp 101 Podcast, on all major platforms, the social media platforms. You can find us. And YouTube as well. Just Google the Hemp 101 Podcast. You can also follow me at lance.kr on LinkedIn. That's my major platform that I'm most active on, just because that's the business side of the thing. And I would like to caveat on what Mr. Floyd said about voting. I see that message loud and clear throughout the airwaves right now, and it couldn't be more true than ever, because as the war has gone on, this is my personal opinion, I'm not speaking for all veterans, it's gotten to the point where just thanking somebody for their service, I'm not trying to downplay it at all, because I still like to hear it, because it's a good reminder. It's like, okay, there are people that are still serving. And now that I am out and I am a veteran and I'm not active duty anymore, it's a completely different, mindset. But if you really want to actually honor a veteran more than just saying thank you for your service, you have to vote, Because if we couldn't vote, we couldn't preserve democracy, and we wouldn't have anything to fight for. And that's what we are fighting for when we wear that flag on our right shoulder.
Well said, Mr. Lance Kreck of Hemp 101. I appreciate you taking the time. Once again, this has been In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. And yes, you can find our podcast right alongside his podcast on those same networks. So again, for Lance Kreck, thank you so much for watching In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Weed Talk Now, Weed Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media. We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk Now. This week, we talk with a very special author. His name is Dean Matt, and that is coming up on Weed Talk Now. But reminder, this is a weekly podcast that you can find on all your podcast aggregation networks. And a reminder again, I'm your host and founder of Pro Cannabis Media, Jimmy Young.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
And we welcome in Dean Matt, the author of a very good book that both Kurt and I have both received. It's called Gone to Pot. Welcome to the show. And it's all about the cannabis industry. His name, of course, as we mentioned, is Dean Matt. He's the author, but he's also a former CFO of many, many companies. He's worked with two legendary entrepreneurs one of them is Brad Jacobs from United Rental. The other is Wayne Huizenga, who made his money in waste management, and he's also owned a few sports teams along the way. Dean Matt is from the great state of Illinois. Dean, welcome to Weed Talk Now.
I like everything about the intro, but the great state of Illinois is kind of a stretch.
It's amazing. That's part of your book. You call it the most corrupt state in America. Are you sure? Can we debate that?
Yeah, there's not much debate in my mind.
But you went to the University of Chicago. You live in a suburb of Chicago. I don't want to name the name, but it begins with an N. And you know what? You love where you live, right? I mean, you have an opportunity to live anywhere you want, Dean. Why still in Illinois?
Good question. We got one foot out the door. If I had my way, I'd be in Arizona. My wife's dragging us to Florida. We got a little place down there already. So we'll probably do one of those 50-50 things, just enough to tip the scale so we have residency like Trump in Florida.
There you go. And there's no income tax, right, in Florida? Isn't that what? I knew there was a reason there for sure. Dean, the first question I'm going to ask you is about why you did this book. You had no reason in the world. You were retired. You have your wife alongside. You go flying all over the world. You can go pretty much wherever you want and do whatever you want. Why in the world did you get into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, great question. So I was retired 2 years ago at this time. And as you said, I've been flying since high school. And my wife just took up golf 5 years ago. So we've just been golfing and flying. So finally had some time on our hands. And the phone rang in the summer of 2018. And the company needed a CFO. And ordinarily, I would say, no thanks or listen a little bit. But this is the cannabis industry. So I know nothing about it. I know nothing about a lot of the industries I go into. I kind of think that's an advantage. And I was intrigued. At that time, guys, you got to remember, at that time, July of 2018, the industry was exploding, right? Tilray was $300 a share, and that was the time I was in it. So it was a great time. I was hired to take this company public as their CFO on the Canadian exchanges, and it intrigued me. It was definitely a fixer-upper. I've taken companies public before, but that's why I got into the industry.
Gotcha.
Dean, your book is fascinating because you're an outsider with a long business history that came into the industry. So if I go back to the Big Bang moment, the moment that shook the world, where were you when? Bruce Canopy, they get over $4 billion from Constellation. Where in the process were you? What did you think of that deal? And kind of how did it affect what you were doing?
Yeah, so that happened about a month after I started with this company in Chicago, which was an MSO. We had 6 or 7 operations and 50 legal entities in half a dozen states with a lot of acquisition prospects as well. Everyone was throwing money at us. So that's kind of where I was. And when Canopy got the big investment, that was a shockwave throughout the system, as you said. And the valuations just went up exponentially overnight, way ahead of themselves. But I think the people in the industry, the guys that are running these MSOs, think about it. I mean, a lot of these guys haven't worked for anybody else before. They haven't worked in corporate America. In the company I was at, I was the only one that actually worked in corporate America. So to some extent, people thought that this was normal. and they haven't lived through the internet era, as I have, and other .com bubbles and Bitcoin bubbles and things like that. So the problem I think that happened to the industry is that money was flowing too freely. I mean, I've been in companies where I've struggled to raise $2 or $3 million. It took, all summer to do. We got $100 million in a month and a half, and I didn't even have financials to give to anybody. So it was just definitely, as you read my book, it was Green Acres or the Wild West. I felt like Mr. Douglas in Hooterville. But that's probably one of the worst things that happened to the industry is the free flow of money. And these investors should have known better.
But they didn't, and they still threw millions of dollars at inexperienced management teams, speculative enterprises and business models. How in the world did they get these people to do that?
Well, so since I was with this initial company, in 8 months, we ended up not going public. We ended up selling to a company instead. And after that, I spent now, I'm still consulting and an employee in various companies. Spent all last year on the West Coast, California, Nevada, Arizona, Oregon even. And that's when I started to write my book on the plane, because it's like one of these things to shake your head. As you mentioned earlier, I worked for a couple entrepreneurs. So that's my reference point, So I'm not easily impressed with anything going on in the cannabis industry. And I don't think investors should be either. There's a lot of people that's working very hard. They're busy doing this and that. But, right now, I don't even know if the industry's in investment grade. I do think that mid to long term, the prospects for the industry are great. I mean, just great. But as with any land grab opportunity, you've got to have people that have been there, done that before. And I think that's one of the flaws, Jimmy and Kurt, that we've had in the industry so far. There was no math done. It was the Wild West. It was spending other people's monopoly money. So investors basically came into these companies and told the CEOs, hey, I want you to get in there. I want you to take this company public, and I want to flip it. So it was in and out. That was the expectation. And these guys have never run public companies before. Just thought, oh, it's easy. How hard could an audit be? That's why I go in there. First thing I did is I hired a room full of auditors. I said, guys, we got 2 or 3 years of financials to get done. Well, will that get done next month? No, it's going to take time. So they're just very, very naive about what it takes to run a company with many shareholders or take a company public.
You just mentioned it actually in your answer that you like the industry and the future looks bright. It's going to lead to my next question. We have an article up on cannabis.net saying there will be another bubble. When U.S. legalization happens, it's going to change the UN drug treaties. You're going to have the G20 countries all be able to grow, produce, sell legally. And with a couple $1 trillion looking to invest, we will have another cannabis bubble just based on supply and demand of numbers like you talk about in your book. Do you agree or disagree?
Kurt, I haven't even thought about that far out. I mean, that makes those numbers make my head hurt. So.
And you're pretty smart, so.
Well, I really haven't even thought about that. But I will say that a lot of these companies thought that they could be all things to all people. I mean, a lot of these companies today, in the last year and a half, before this bubble burst, ran out to Colombia, and they wanted to go to Greece, and they wanted to go all these different countries. And I'm like, guys, there's a lot to do, right back here in our own backyard. There's no need to do that. And that land grab mentality is really what's caused the prices of these acquisitions to go through the roof. I read about many of these failed acquisitions and these just stupid prices that people have paid for acquisitions. And right now we get what we paid for, 90% down on the stock market right now. And I contend and make a lot of predictions in the book until we really get some people that have been there, done that before in the C-suites. Right now there's a lot of lawyers, there's a lot of donut shop owners and things like that. But and they built something. They built something of value, just not of the value that they think it is.
I love some of the expressions that you use and some of the things that you bring up in this. The land grab strategy was one, and Company A, how they had a $30 million valuation mistake, I thought was a great story to start with. But due diligence, OG, which I thought was a strain of cannabis or old guy, and it turned out it's original gangster, no idea. They don't know what they don't know. Can you talk a little bit about that statement? Because it is a theme through a lot of these experiences that you've had.
Yeah, and I like to differentiate because I think I do a good, I may be wrong, I think I do a good job of knowing what I don't know. I'm not the guy to talk to about should cannabis be a legal product, the health benefits of cannabis, the different strains, how to grow. I'm not that guy, okay? But I'll go toe to toe with anybody about why the industry is in its sorry state right now. So there was a lot of just naiveness, naivete in these owners because they've never run anything before. And if you think about it, Jimmy, on one hand, the best thing that some of these guys have done is they've never worked for anybody before. Why is that? Because they don't know red tape. They just plow through a brick wall. It's not elegant, it's not efficient, but they kind of charge ahead and get it done. So a lot of these guys get high marks for that. But then the worst thing that they've done is never worked for anybody before, because they don't know fiduciary responsibility and transparency and what audits are for and how long audits take. So, some of the naivete I've seen is that thinking a 2-year audit for a company that's got 6 operating companies and 50 legal entities could get it done in a month and a half. I mean, that's just wishful thinking. They just don't know, those types of things.
One company, Dean, you mentioned by name in your book and went on record was MedMen and Adam Bierman. Obviously, I think the latest is they're trying to seize his house, the creditors. And kind of what's your opinion today on MedMen's future and what they need to do to turn it around?
Yeah, so what I write about, I've never met him. I've seen the legend. I've read a lot of the stories. I've seen a lot of the interviews. And he was a rock star in the summer of 2018. And investors who should have known better let their guard down, just like we've seen in the internet era, for instance. But, the come to Jesus was in November of 2019 when they put out a press release, our results aren't going to be that good and mea culpa. And, we're going to get cash flow positive. I was just on Harvest's analyst call yesterday. Same thing there. We're going to, be profitable. We'll see. But the question is, why haven't you been profitable all along? So they finally realized that, cash is a scarce resource and it's not infinite. And again, that's the lack of them operating, lack of their operating experience in the past. Brad Jacobs, the guy I worked with, we took a company public. It was a garbage company. He ended up selling that company for $2 billion. And it was a roll-up, a land grab in different geographies. And after he successfully did that, he walked away from tons of acquisition potentials. A lot of these guys don't. It's a bidding war. I've run mergers and acquisitions for a $13 billion division of a huge food conglomerate at one time. And, I can't tell you all the math that I did on those deals, but here it was very emotional. We're just going to pay in stock. As I write in the book, these guys wouldn't know how to put pencil to paper and figure if they're overpaying or underpaying. And their investors were pushing them just to go out and cast your net and get as much land as possible. That strategy only works if you know how much cash you're going to be burning. And if you look out over the horizon, there was none of that in the companies I've been associated with. There was no looking ahead. It was like go, 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 go. And so when you overpay for acquisitions, this is the result.
Hey, I think one thing you didn't talk a lot about in the book, but now after I read the book and finished it, I'm curious. The black market, how much of a force and impact is this having on sales, and how does eventually this game end? Is it federal legalization, or how does the government get a hold of and slow the black market down?
Well, I spent a lot of time out in California last year, and again, I don't know it as much as other people know it out there, but I think the takeaways are I mean, I know investors that just say, you know, I'll pitch them a deal or whatever. They'll say, is it California? I say, yeah, I don't want anything to do with it. It's just it's just an intangible right now. But I think what's happening, not only the black market, but with taxes as well. So California, the prices are being affected by the black market and by taxes. And the same thing here in Illinois. You know, our mayor of Chicago and the state of Illinois think they're doing good things by having some high taxes so that they could rake in the revenue. But I think what they're doing is just prolonging the black market. You know, you want to pay, you know, twice as much at a legal store as you would with your neighborhood guy. You know, so that's really prolonging the issue. And then the issue of oversupply and demand. You know, and we're seeing that in Canada, and the companies are just falling by the wayside right now. But you know, I think there was a rush in Illinois, for instance. They had 60 medical dispensaries, and then seemingly overnight, everyone that had a medical dispensary gets an adult use license. What a windfall that was, you know. And I think the rush is that the state of Illinois was looking for the path of least resistance so that it could start raking in tax revenue. And another thing that kind of exacerbated here in Illinois is us old white guys, all the old white guys that had, and some of them aren't that old. Oh,
He's looking at me. He's looking at me.
You can point at me too. But,
OGW.
yeah, but all that did is entrenched old white guys in owning these licenses, you know. And I write in my book, I think it's going to be very tough for social equity participants to have its intended effect now. And I was just on a call last night in Maryland. The same thing's happening.
Hold that thought for a second. A reminder, you're watching and listening to Weed Talk Now, our weekly podcast with interesting people in the cannabis industry. Dean Matt, the author of Gone to Pot, certainly one of them. And we are also available on all your podcast aggregation networks as well. And you can find us on all those social media outlets that are out there, including your YouTubes, your Facebooks, your Instagrams, and your Twitters. That's where you'll find We Talk Now and Pro Cannabis Media. So as I was mentioning, and you mentioned old white guys, it's old white guy guilt that is driving a lot of this industry because of what we've done to people of color in this country. It's horrible and horrific. It's part of our history. And now, you know, you see a lot of these lawmakers saying, oh, we want to expunge the records of the people that have been most affected on the war on drugs. Well, that's great. Expunge the records by all means. But you must give them an opportunity to get into this business. And everything is working against those people. You talk about it in your book. How are we going to get out from this, or is there going to be funding available specifically targeted for the economically empowered groups that are out there that want to get into this business? And again, every state is different, Dean. You know, here in Massachusetts, we love to wave the liberal flag, but our governor shut down the adult use recreational industry because of COVID-19 and let the medical community continue. You're always fighting against that stigma that has been around for 80 years. And the people that have paid the price in that 80 years, it's time for them to get a shot at this. Are we going to see that?
Well, I think I just heard just within the last week, I think Illinois is putting, as you mentioned, a fund. I think they're putting together a fund of $30 million. I think that's a way to go. I write in my book, I think the deck is stacked against social equity applicants. First off, here in Illinois, they announced this program in a new round of licenses in October of last year, and they gave everybody 90 days to get their applications in, meaning that they had to be in by January 2nd. So all these social equity applicants are getting excited, but I think the deck has been stacked against them because they don't have the experience in writing a winning application in 90 days. They don't have the contacts. Financial strength so they're going to get points for being social equity, but I think those points are going to be trumped by the experience, the entrenchment, you know, of all the people that already have stuff. There is local rule where a couple aldermen in Chicago have said, I don't care if you want a license or not, unless you're social equity applicant or associated with that, don't plan on opening your store in my ward, basically. So there's much more that's needed, but it's pervasive throughout the country as far as I can tell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you brought up in your book the straw man too. Companies who are going to be tempted to get the token person to get that license or get that delivery, and then either move them out or kind of let them be a figurehead and run it beneath them.
Well, that's commonplace. I mean, I know that the companies I was associated with had to apply it in Ohio and Pennsylvania and all that stuff. But the problem I've observed is that they'll go cut a deal. Hey, I need boots on the ground in Ohio. You're a very wealthy person out there. I'd like to put you, and you're a doctor or whatever. I'd like to put you in my application. Well, what's in it for me? Well, we'll give you a cut or whatever. And these deals were never formalized. So lo and behold, if the company wins, now the guy in Ohio's in the bird's eye seat. Says, well, hey, I know we talked about I'll get, $250,000 for being part of your application and helping you win it. But you know what? I'm going to hold you hostage, and now I want $1 million. And again, that's just inexperience. You don't go into these arrangements unbuttoned. You don't expose your shareholders to the whims of some nut job out in Ohio or Pennsylvania that's going to hold you hostage. I mean, that's just management 101.
Speaking of Management 101, and another thing that we picked up in your book, and I'm going to give you kudos for this, your author's notes, if you just put a thing together of all your author's notes, that is great reading unto itself. And the one that I love the best, okay, is $1 million for a logo, okay? And then you decided, wait a second, you're crazy. Go give $200 to the local high school art class and we'll use a logo from them. Great idea. I love anything giving back to youth. And I've always said you give a kid a chance, they'll blow you away with their ability. And then your author's note, to this day, I kick myself because you could have gone to a grade school and got it done for $50. You still feel the same way about that?
Yeah, well, it just shows you how cheap I am, basically. The viewers will have to read that, but I did try to make the book humorous to keep people laughing instead of crying, because there's a lot to cry about. I'm not kind to a lot of people in the book. MedMen, as you mentioned earlier, I don't. Who knows if they're going to survive? They had all sorts of problems, that you read from the lawsuits. A lot of the info from the book came from publicly information lawsuits. But I did put some things in there just to keep people laughing. You haven't mentioned what I think about Captain Sully Sullenberger. I don't think much about him.
In my notes. I have it in here. You are in there. It is between golf and Sully. You're in my notes. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just to go off tangent a little bit, my wife loves the movie, and she loves Sullenberger, and Tom Hanks made a movie. I said, you know what? What's so hard about landing a plane on the longest, widest, flattest runway ever? He didn't have any choices. He either crashes into buildings, right, or lands in the Hudson. Or he did it. Big deal,
But we have to premise this. You've been flying since you were in high school, correct? I think you were introduced to it by your dad, yes?
Yes, yeah.
And you own a plane. So you are a licensed, experienced pilot. For those of us who have really only been passengers on planes, and I have been in a few small planes as well, it freaks a lot of people out. But isn't flying a simple concept about when it's air and gliding through air? Isn't that how you fly?
I couldn't even tell you. I look at 747s. I'm like, how the hell is that thing getting in the air? I don't know anymore. But a lot of pilots get in trouble because they get in over their head with weather. For instance, I'm instrument rated, so I could fly in weather. But everyone's got to have their personal minimums. My wife and I are going to West Virginia next week, and I could fly in the clouds, but if the ceiling's too low, you just got to choose not to do it. I looked on the internet the other day on one of these sites, and people were complimenting this pilot. They had a video of a pilot landing, or a plane landing on a highway, a crowded highway, and he didn't hit anybody. And dozens of comments. This guy's an excellent pilot. wow, this guy is really, and I'm like, this guy's an idiot. He ran out of fuel. I mean, so, and it's, to some extent, it's like that in the internet business. Everyone's looking at the hard work that's being done, but you step back and look at the big picture. I'm a tough grader. You know, I don't grade on a curve. You know, you could put your money in cannabis, you could put your money in food manufacturing, you know, but there's not a good reason over the last year to put your money in cannabis until you start getting boards that don't give hall passes anymore to inept managers, you know, and we're seeing some of the C-suites starting to be cleaned out, and we're seeing a lot of focus on profitability. You know, it's all talk right now. I think these companies still don't have any trust yet of the investing public and the equity analysts that follow their stock. There's a lot of skepticism on these calls, you know, and they've got to have a couple quarters of being able to look ahead and meeting their projections. And with COVID now, it just makes it all that much more difficult to do. But the top line's still growing, and I'm sensing that there's an emphasis now on cost where there wasn't before. It was all top line revenue.
Gotcha.
On the calls you're doing, you're hitting all my questions. How is COVID affecting this industry at the 50,000 foot flight level from what you're hearing and talking to people?
So what I'm hearing is that the basket size is generally bigger. There was a big push when this thing first started out, and everyone got excited. Oh, you know, cannabis is recession proof. Look at what the revenues are doing. Well, you know, it was pantry loading, right? Everyone was kind of loading up. Still to be determined, I think, if people whose spendable resources, whose extra money, do they want to spend it on cannabis? I think that jury is still out, but they do go curbside. You know, all these companies are attacking this with curbside delivery. To some extent, it actually is more efficient because people are spending less time nosing around in the dispensaries, and they get on the phone or make their order and they just pick it up curbside. So to some extent, it's a little bit more efficient at the dispensary level. The basket size is larger because they don't make as frequent trips there anymore. You know, so I've heard that quite a bit as well. All the companies are kind of managing through and kind of reinventing themselves. So I don't know if this has been a huge impact either way. But that's what I hear is going on.
Do you think, I know there was I think Aurora just came down and bought a US CBD company, and there's kind of this is going to happen now a lot more. This is how Canadian companies will get their foothold here. Agree or disagree?
I haven't thought through that, so I guess directionally it makes sense that that's how they could get their foothold here. So I guess I would agree with that.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question about the Safe Banking Act. You mentioned that at the tail end of your book. We know that the most recent COVID-19 recovery bill in Congress right now has an amendment in there that includes the Safe Banking Act that flew through the House about, I want to say it was like 5 months ago, but of course, what did you say? Cannabis is dog years. So do you expect that the Republican-controlled Senate is willing to give the Democrats a win by getting the Safe Banking Act as an amendment in this time in our history right now?
Yeah, I don't know if they will or not. You know, as the whole bill, you know, from what I hear, it's going to be dead on arrival. I don't know if they're going to resurrect pieces out of it. I do write in the book that, you know, I think the industry will be safer. I think everyone agrees with that. You can't have delivery drivers riding around, you know, with $50,000 of cash. So there is banking that's needed. You know, I tell a couple stories in the book of how it's impacted some companies I've been associated with, and what a waste of time for CFOs or people in the accounting. You know, we must have been pitched. I'm still getting pitched. Oh, I've got your solution. You know, I've got your credit card solution. I've got your ATM and banking solution. I ask for two things when people call me up. Can I get a routing number and a checking account number and a debit card? Yeah, we could do that. Well, I tell in the book, you know, after analyzing and trying to vet these people out before spending time filling out forms and things like that, I still wasted tons and tons of time because these guys never came through, you know, guys that I thought I really vetted. So I'm just skeptical. I mean, and the guys that don't deliver these products right now, it's all alternative banking and stuff like that. But CFOs, controllers throughout the country are just wasting a heck of a lot of time trying to find the right solution. And I'm sure there's a right solution out there. You know, I just don't have time to find what that is. But that's needed in the industry. Everyone agrees with that.
Well, I think you're right. I have friends who work at Visa and MasterCard, and they're the same way. You'll see these emails, and I have the solution, and you ask Visa and MasterCard directly. And now I think Visa US bought Visa International a few years ago, so it's real cleaned up. Like, in no way do we authorize from us what do they call the code for cannabis sales in America. But you'll get 10 emails a day that says we can do it. It's all legal. And you're absolutely right. So I think there is some cleanup more to do on that side. If you look out and had to throw a dart or your own investment money, what niches or areas of the industry do you like 24 months? What piques your interest now that you have this much experience?
I don't like MSOs. Let me start with that. I think
do with what you don't like, and we'll get to what's left.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to do it that way. I think the MSOs just overextended themselves. I mean, even you hear Acreage and Harvest talk that, you know, we stopped this deal with Verano. We're going to concentrate on a smaller footprint, and I think there's some merit to that. You know, unless you got guys at the top that have been there, done that before. You know, then cast that net. But we don't in this industry right now. So concentrate on making yourself profitable, and then expand from there. I think that's a good strategy. There will be consolidation that continues in the industry by definition and necessity. A necessity because people are running out of money. People are not well funded. I do write in the book just a couple of products I've kind of been somewhat associated with. You know, there's tons of, I had one come across my desk today, a CBD, you know, company. But these guys had no experience in the industry. It was evident from looking at their 90-page deck, you know, that they had no experience in the industry, and don't know the extent of the competition that's out there. CBD cigarettes, I've associated with a company that does a lot of work on CBD cigarettes. There could be some merit to that. When Las Vegas opens up, consumption lounges are you know, on the uptick as well. But I think the last chapters of my book, I write that the industry needs to quit running trick plays and just blocking and tackling. Right. 3 yards and a cloud of dust for now.
Vince Lombardi would be proud of you, for sure. Absolutely. Let me ask a little bit. You're wearing your shirt. I want to get into the love of flying you have, mucho dinero. You've got this 50 states, 50 rounds of golf in 50 states in 50 days. Is that on hold because of COVID, or are you still moving forward with that?
It was on hold because of cannabis. So we were, you know, getting sponsors and trying to get teed up. We've been in touch, my wife and I, in touch with Guinness World Record, you know, to get that. We know all the specs and trying to line up the golf courses and the hotel sponsors and things like that. And then I got involved in cannabis. So that's been on hold for a couple of years. In the meantime, I've had hip surgery, and, you know, who knows if I'll be able to pull, you too? Yeah. Who knows if I'll be able to pull that one off anymore, but it's still a dream of mine to kind of get that done.
Yeah, I had my left hip done twice over the last 7 years now, and it's good now. I can give you some hope. And usually it takes a full year for you to get back to where it used to be, if that gives you any hope moving forward. Yeah,
no, I'm moving. I had it 6 months ago. I'm moving around pretty good.
Are you playing golf yet? Are you playing golf?
Oh yeah, playing golf, but not running. I used to run, and I kind of miss it. And I think the knees and my hips go. Right.
There's an imbalance now. You're going to have an imbalance, and hate to talk about my body, but you're definitely going to have issues with your S1, L5 right at the top of your tailbone, because that's where the balance is between your hips. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. I think if we're going to talk about old guy problems, we're going to lose half our audience.
Different podcast, right? Let me ask you, Dean, So you were saying you want to see the quality in the C-suite before you get excited or would make a good move. Let's play fantasy CEO like they play fantasy football. Give me a couple names in your wish list that if you saw we're transitioning to a cannabis or CBD company, you'd say, oh, I like him, or that's good.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't even get down to the name level. I mean, it's even more basic than that. Do you have any experience in corporate America?
Do you have a college degree?
Well, no. Again, these guys that are in there now, some are lawyers, some are entrepreneurs. These, kudos to them. They work hard. They put the industry on the map. But it's the Peter principle. They don't have the experience in running multi-state operations with 2, 3, 4, 500 employees. There's quite a big difference there. They don't know how to scale. Here's something that happens in all the companies, not only in the cannabis industry, but I've seen this elsewhere as well. These companies traditionally underinvest in the back office, HR, finance, accounting, etc. I had 3 people in my accounting department when I started with this $30 million company. 3 people in 6 different states. The mindset just isn't there to scale a company, and you got to spend some money on some costs. A lot of times the entrepreneurs, because that's the way they're wired, unless you're selling something or whatever, you're a cost to me, and I want to minimize those costs. So, Green Thumb, for instance, they got 30 people in their accounting department. We were about the same size, although we weren't public. We had 3. So that math just doesn't work, and I see that all across the board. Look at what's happening. You don't have enough people in your HR department. Everything is done on the real thin. You're going to have lawsuits. You're going to have shareholder lawsuits. You're going to have employee lawsuits. When we tried to sell our company, the first thing that a couple public companies asked me for is projections. Dean, can I see your projections for the next year? I said, we don't have any. That's just like you got to be kidding me. But that was life as normal in the company I was associated with. So they got to spend more money to scale.
Are we in a perfect storm right now for this kind of business venture? You've got a industry that's being projected in the trillions. You've got very little knowledge about what works in the industry as far as what is going to be profitable. And Kurt talks about this all the time. Nobody in the cannabis industry has made any money yet, right, Kurt? Isn't that what you say a lot of times?
Unless you're touching the flower.
Right. Okay. Or you got in really early. And now, because it's a cash economy and you've got the male ego gets involved with this too, not just in the business corporate space, but also in the local legislators and the host agreements that are out there just waiting to be manipulated, if you will. Are we seeing that perfect storm, and is it going to change in the future, and how might it change in the future once you clear out some of these young people that are in there just getting funny money thrown at them? Monopoly money, I believe, is how you refer to it.
Yeah, well, I think the companies I'm associated with have always kind of been, the most successful ones have always been run by the numbers. I mean, Waste Management was run by the numbers. Every month we went into our next level up, our regions, and our results versus budget, our actuals versus budget were reviewed. What's going good at your company? What's going bad? How you doing spending on CapEx? That's running a business. These cannabis companies are slowly getting into that mode where they are really running a business. We had to know our numbers. We had to know what our bogey was, etc. I'll contrast that. I'll add. I was with an international airline caterer that was losing millions of dollars a year, and I'd go out to see the New York kitchen, for instance, and I'm talking with the chef. And the chef's like, "Oh, Dean, I just found this great bakery down in Soho, and I'm going to bring them into. I like their little croissant that they use. We're going to put it on the Air France plane." I'm like, "Wait a minute, Pepe or whatever his name was. I said, you've got 13 bakeries that you're dealing with. I don't want another one. I want you to get that down to like 5 and save some money. You just don't understand all the costs. And to some extent, that's the way it is with the cannabis companies too. Everyone's an artisan. The growers are the chefs, are the artists, are the artisans. My flower does this, and that's good. But what's the strategic plan in running a business? So the C-suites need to give these guys more directions. I want you to develop one new product next year, or this, and your yield has to be here, and your cost per gram has to be here, and everyone's got to understand that. We're not there yet in the industry by a long stretch, but we're starting to get that awareness.
Dean, all you got to do is pay with stock. That's, as you say in your book, it's not real. Just pay everything with stock. Who cares? That's a great part.
Yeah.
One of the companies that you talked about, and I got to bring this up again, was the company that had the liberal vacation policy of up to 8 weeks in a year. Now, when I read that, I almost blanked myself, because I'm like, how can you get involved with a company like that that's run by a bunch of 20 or 30 somethings and wants to give out 8 weeks of vacation a year? A perfect example, again, of mismanagement in the cannabis space, right, Dean?
Yeah, I'll let your viewers read it for themselves, but it had to do with an HR policy where the owner thought the person that was running this policy was doing it, I'd say, kind of normal, but she was not running it normal. She was giving the store away. She was giving people 8 weeks of vacation, and the owner didn't even know. Well, that's not running a business, right? Running a business, there's got to be meetings, there's got to be accountability, there's got to be review of the financials. And if the owner is not doing that with his team, the owner can't scale a company to be a $200 million company by himself. You've got to have that team beneath you, and it's just not in some owners' DNAs. Some people have their thumb on the cash register, and they do a good business, and they understand all that stuff. But if you're going to achieve a $200 million company, you got to develop a team, and that's just not in these people's DNA.
That's too bad, because it's still supply, demand, cash flow, and costs. Basic business 101, yes?
Yeah, there's a lot of business 101, and in the case of that vacation example, it really was absurd what was happening. People were getting 8 weeks of vacation. They were cashing out their vacation. They thought they were working for the government, for crying out loud. It was just nuts, and it was going right on underneath the CEO's nose, and he didn't even know it. And there's basic internal controls that auditors look for. And if you're going to run a business, you just got to have basic internal controls and checkpoints. But if you're too busy running around overpaying for acquisitions, and you don't meet with your people and have the right accountability and infrastructure and internal controls, this stuff goes on. And shareholders, think that they're investing in well-run, well-oiled companies and their money's safe and all that stuff. It's not. A lot of companies I've been associated with, there's been no accountability. As you mentioned earlier, people have overpaid for acquisition. Nobody knows but the owner. And there's a ton of wasted money. Now, there's going to be wasted money in startups. Don't get me wrong. But just the misuse that I've seen of investor money, and the waste and the kind of the secrecy is just absurd.
Does big tobacco, big pharma, or big alcohol come rolling in here in a year or two? And the C-suite of R.J. Reynolds, is that in the future, and would that clean it up?
Yeah, it's going to happen. I don't know when, but when I was with Brad Jacobs at United Waste Systems, we bought mom and pop landfills and hauling companies in the most out of the way places. Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the backwoods of West Virginia and Kentucky. We did the hard work that no one else wanted to do. We got our systems in place, and we put a nice bow tie around them. And now a bigger company is interested in the package that we created. So they're not interested in little onesie twosies, but we were able to get, some critical mass of companies to do that. And I think that's what the cannabis, the ultimate exit strategy is going to be. But Philip Morris and all these guys, the big tobacco and big alcohol, it's, they look down at it and say, it's a freaking mess right now. You better get your act together. There'll be consolidation, where maybe there's 24 MSOs in the country, maybe there'll be 3 or 4 good ones. And as the consolidation starts to mature and they have confidence in the numbers, we still don't have confidence in the numbers. Look at all the layoffs and the write-offs and all that stuff. Even though these are audited people, these are audited companies if you're public, right? But there's no confidence in the number. But yeah, I think you're a fool to not believe that they're going to come in at some point in time. And
what's your prediction on federal legalization without getting political and presidencies and re-elections? What's your, if I said, when's it going to be federal legalized, what would be your answer?
I know the answer. It's in the book. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I may have changed a little bit. I said within 5 years, but let's say Trump's elected another 4 years, maybe it doesn't happen during his term. Maybe it happens after that. There's been a lot of discussion on the analyst calls about if COVID-19 accelerates this or not, and I think if people that are emotionally vested in the industry, this is going to accelerate it. And there's some merit to the argument. There's also merits to the argument that it won't accelerate it at all, So I think everyone's hopeful. And I think that's what happens a lot in the cannabis industry is run so much by emotion and happy talk. And, there's just a lot of fundamentals that are still missing in the industry right now.
If you could give advice to entrepreneurs that are looking at you right now on a Zoom call, what would be the first piece of advice you'd give us as we start our venture in this space?
Go in with your eyes wide open. I mean, even though I wrote a book on the most absurd things I've seen in the industry, I've seen it in other industries as well. But don't go, from a banking industry where everything's buttoned up and there's procedures, probably overkill, right? If you've never worked in entrepreneurial startups before, this probably isn't for you. On the other hand, this is an industry where you can make a big impact, to help move the ball forward.
Right, which is what we're trying to do actually here by telling the stories of the cannabis industry through their own words. And I think even someone like you, Dean, who wrote this book, through your own observations of the industry with your depth of experience, there's still hope for this because it still goes back to fundamentals of let's see, we need to bring in more revenue than we spend, right? I mean, that's about as simple as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and I know the companies I was working with, I would say, we got to take a stock compensation expense hit, and they were like, oh, this wasn't on my radar screen. So you got that level of naivete where people should just know better, and it'll take a little bit of time. It's getting better. Have we bottomed out? I'd like to hope we've bottomed out. Back in December, January, it really couldn't get much worse. There really wasn't a lot of good news. Some of these stocks just within the last month are ticking up a little bit, but I don't get excited about week to week or month to month. I kind of look out, maybe by the end of this year, the industry be a little bit more stabilized, but it's going to take, new people to come in and put some internal controls and procedures in place. And acquisitions, which were a fad a year and a half ago, people are getting a little smarter at it right now. They understand they can't overpay. The math doesn't work.
Is your phone still working, even though you have this out now, published?
Yeah. I have my wife start my car.
But I love her.
You do love her. I know you do, because you travel everywhere with her.
Yeah, well, it's funny. 80% of the feedback I'm getting is like, man, you nailed it. Yeah. This stuff's going on in my company. I thought this was all normal, and it's really been an eye opener. And then the 20% of the people that, probably, have a contract out on me are in the C-suites of the companies I'm talking about now. But again, I have no ponies in the race. I've got some investments in cannabis. I continue to consult and work, and if nobody wants my advice, I got other things to do. So I'm not getting emotionally tied to this anymore. I kind of wrote in my book too that I was emotionally tied in the internet days, and I said, boy, I'm not letting my guard down again.
You learned your lesson from the .coms, right? Is that pretty much what that was? Yeah. Well, appreciate the lessons you've shared with us today, both on this show and also in your book, Dean. I really enjoyed chatting with you. But before you go, okay, I'm not going to ask you your top 10 golf courses, but I will ask you your top 3. And I think I know one of them. What's the top 3 golf courses you've played?
I don't know if I want to go right down to golf course, but I will tell you areas. So my wife and I went out to Scottsdale and Sedona last year. Of course, Scottsdale, Arizona golf is great. Love it. Michigan's got some good golf courses as well. But the up-and-coming go-to destination is Branson, Missouri. There are about 5 golf courses down there. And look, your viewers could look up Big Cedar Lodge. The guy that owns Bass Pro Shops, Johnny Morris, basically built this whole resort. Tiger Woods has one golf course in the United States that he's an architect of, and it's opening up as we speak down there. And I was down there last year, and my wife and I are going down there again. It's near Branson, Missouri. But Big Cedar Lodge is my number 1 place to golf.
Not Pebble Beach.
I've walked it, but I've never played it. Yeah.
Oh,
All I could tell you is I had a dream round at Pebble Beach on a 75-degree, no-wind day, okay? And walked up to and I got the last tee time. The golden handshake, are you familiar with that? You know what the golden handshake is to starters?
No.
You give a starter $100 and you can walk on pretty much.
Okay.
Not that I did that, but okay. And I was told to do it, so I did. Plus, I knew the starter. That helped. It's still the Carmel, California, and the Monterey Peninsula is still the most beautiful spot on earth that I've seen so far. And being able to play golf there was a religious experience. It really was amazing. And I totally want you there, Dean. You have to go. And then you call me after and you say, you're right, that's better than, was it Branson, Missouri? Where am I going?
Yep. It's a golf destination.
Big Cedar Lodge, Jimmy. Big Cedar Lodge.
Big Cedar Lodge.
Big Cedar Lodge, yeah. So you must be a better golfer than me, Jimmy, because sometimes I go out and the best 2 balls I hit all day is when I step on the rake in the sand trap.
There you go. That's a great line. I would say just remember the average round of golf in America is 100, and I hit it right on the nose with a 12-foot bender on the 18th hole at sunset at Pebble Beach. It was magnificent, let's just say. And the book that Dean Matt has written is gone to pot. Welcome to the Blank Show. So, Dean, again, thank you so much for joining us here on Weed Talk Now. Once again, remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. So for Dean Matt, Kurt, I'm going to do it for you too. For Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Thanks for joining us. And again, remember, use it responsibly.
Weed Talk Now, Weed Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, Cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media. We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. This podcast, as you know, is supported by our friends at Revolutionary Clinics. And as you might imagine, this is a very small cannabis world because our guest, Meredith Mahoney from Lantern, is also involved with Revolutionary Clinics. Meredith, first of all, welcome so much and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell me about Lantern. And you know what? The first question I want to know is, how did you come up with the name?
Well, great question. So it kind of goes back to what our brand is founded on. And so, from a business perspective, business model perspective, we are an e-commerce platform and a cannabis delivery software facilitator. So we sit between the consumer and the dispensary. But if you go a little further, we created a brand that we wanted to feel very good about. We wanted to make sure that it was educational, that it was an important voice in destigmatizing a category that's very, very misunderstood. And so the word lantern really comes from the idea of shining a light on something that's been in darkness for a long time. And so thinking about taking the cannabis community and the cannabis category and bringing it out of the shadows, bringing it into the light. We talk about it very openly. My team talks about it very openly. We talk about our experiences. We talk about the way that we purchase it, the education that we need, people that we're meeting. And so we really want to be part of helping to normalize this category.
Well, welcome aboard. We're all in it together, that's for sure. And I'm all for those, all of those things. And I love that story. The first question I've got to ask is, do you have to go and get a license to be a delivery service? Are you actually putting people on the street, or are you strictly a software provider that connects the consumer and the dispensary?
We are strictly a software and marketing company. We don't need to hold a license. And that was by design. We were very excited in Massachusetts about the social equity initiative and making sure that, we're helping to facilitate social equity and economic empowerment applicants to really build their businesses with us. We do, even though we are not a license holder, we are very much on the forefront of compliance. So we act as if we do hold a license. We hold ourselves to that standard with regard to advertising, with regard to any information we're providing on the website, with regard to kind of disclosure and anything related to really operating above board in a compliant way. We like to kind of hold ourselves to that standard, but no, we did not have to get a license.
Which is a good thing. I mean, we all know that it's a highly regulated business with 1 million inspections, and it can be a daunting endeavor. Let's just say. You brought up the social empowerment, economic empowerment, and social equity. What exactly are you doing for them? If you're not actually hiring delivery drivers, and you're not, right?
We're not hiring them for our payroll, like to be on our payroll. But we run an incubator program, and that was started about a year ago by our founder, Justin Robinson. He put together a curriculum. He has, I believe it's 8 different sessions. It's hands-on mentorship with people in the industry, people on our team, connecting the incubator participants with attorneys, with dispensaries, whatever they need. We have an application process. People apply to get into the program. And, we're also doing a lot of outreach. So in the early days, Justin was going to CCC meetings, making sure that we were connecting with the right folks in the community. And actually our first class, now we have a few folks from that class that have gone on to either start their own delivery businesses in other categories to kind of get ready for cannabis delivery. So one of our participants is doing a lot of, is running a pretty big delivery operation for Drizzly, our sister company on the alcohol side. And then 2 others that we've been working with are well on their way with kind of getting their host community agreement, with getting, starting to think about how they're going to procure their vehicles, getting set up with legal counsel. So we're very hands-on with helping in any way that we can with the business piece of their journey. But at the end of the day, they will have their own independent businesses. We'll help provide the connections to the dispensary partners that we're working with, and hopefully just helping to be part of that network will help them get off the ground.
Yeah, there you go. And speaking of getting off the ground, you're basically a new company, and in a unprecedented time, we all seem to be, hunkered down in our homes and avoiding people as much as possible. I opened my first business in 2008, that weekend that the entire world's economy got cut in half, you might remember. So being a glutton for punishment, here I am during COVID-19, launching another endeavor, if you will. But that's just moi. That's not something you have to worry about. For you, though, were you concerned about this announcement during COVID-19, especially in the state where the governor decided he'd shut down adult use recreation immediately because he didn't see it as essential?
I think that it all happened so quickly that I didn't have time to really reflect on whether or not we should launch or whether we should do what we were doing. We were well into it. The founder started working on this business actually a couple of years ago. I've been with the company for 4 or 5 months now, but this has been a long time in the works. Obviously with the pause on adult use, it threw a lot of our dispensary partners. We're working with only one partner right now, Rev Clinics, but we had a number of other conversations going, and I think it put a temporary bit of chaos into their operations. But what I'm finding is that everyone that we're talking to and working with across the country, these business owners are very innovative. You have to be in cannabis. You have to be nimble. You have to be patient. You have to be a problem solver. And so this was another thing that they had to problem solve. And they've really done a phenomenal job pivoting their businesses. We fortunately, I think, can help be a solution for them because delivery has come to the forefront, pickup and delivery. And while we didn't launch in reaction to this pandemic, we were launched prior to the pandemic. It really, I think, helped raise the conversation and the priority level for our dispensary partners.
There you go.
I've worked for startups for a long time. And so if it's not a pandemic, it's something else. There's always things getting thrown at you left and right. It's you lose your investor or you lose a key team member. I don't want to compare that to what's going on in the world because that's my very small point of view versus, a lot of things to deal with at the global level. But we just tried to pivot as quickly as we could and be good partners.
It's funny, I use the term adapt and improvise a lot.
Yes.
Because it's a lesson that you learn as an entrepreneur and certainly someone who's trying to start a business. And I also teach at the college level, and it's a lesson I try to explain to the kids too. And, sometimes they look at me like, what are you talking about now? And I'm like, well, just remember those words, guys, adapt and improvise. Okay. It definitely will apply to a life lesson, a life situation that you're in at some point, So if I were to, as a medical card patient, and I am, and by the way, I also go to Rev Clinics because I think they have the best operation. That being said, do I sign up for delivery on the Rev Clinic site, or do I go directly to Lantern? How does one get involved with this delivery service?
So if you were to become a customer of Lanterns, you would actually go to our site directly, which is lanternnow.com, and you would shop the site, browse the products. I think one thing that's a differentiator for Lantern is that we have created a user experience that feels very familiar to anyone that's done any shopping online. So we look like, you're shopping for a sweater or you're shopping for paper towels. It's very, very familiar feeling the way that you shop and browse the site. You can shop by strain, you can shop by product type, and you select your products, add them to your cart. In a future world, let's say that you entered your delivery address, and let's say that there were 2 dispensaries that serviced your address. You could either pick which dispensary that you wanted to work with, or you could start by picking a product, and then that would kind of marry that order to that dispensary selection. And then once you've completed all of your product selection and check out, we don't actually collect your payments or anything online. You just tell us which payment type you want to use. We kick the order over to the dispensary, in this case, Revolutionary Clinics. And then if you are already a patient of theirs, they will pack the order, deliver it to your home. If you're in the 60-minute delivery area, you can get it right now. You can get it very quickly. Otherwise, they'll do a scheduled delivery. If you're a new patient, then today they'll call you. They'll make sure they'll verify your patient number. They'll verify your address. It's really great. They just want to make sure that the patients know what to expect when the driver arrives. Make sure you have your ID ready. Here's your payment type. And so after the order leaves our system, then it goes over to Revolutionary, and they do everything from there.
Right.
And they deliver it to you.
And they deliver it to you.
Correct.
But hold that thought for a second, because I just want to tell people about this amazing maze pipe by Weedgets. That's weedgets.com, WEEDGETS.com. It's a very special smoking filtration system that cools the draw on the flower that you ignite from 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit all the way down to 80 into your lungs. To find out more, check out Weedgets.com, and if you decide to take it on, please put in Weed Talk 2020 and get yourself a discount. So anyway, what I was saying was this.
How are people going to find out about the Lantern service?
So one thing is doing great podcasts. We are doing a lot of press right now. We are looking to really communicate with our dispensary's current customer base. Rev's been great getting the word out for us. In the future, when we get back to normal in the world, you'll see a lot of advertising out there for Lantern, a lot of out-of-home advertising. We're looking to do partnerships. We're working with the patient community, the physician community. So we're really just looking to get the word out there. And I think this is a great service for patients, those that really can't leave their homes, and also those that just don't want to right now. So hopefully we can really get the word out there.
Yeah, and rumor has it, I mean, as I follow along the various news, adult use recreational delivery is going to be loosened and launched. It sounds like it is in the next time. Let's say before the end of the year, because as you know, the whole world has been put on hold right now because of COVID-19. I'm guessing that is a key part of your the future business model too, is working with a lot of the recreational dispensaries. Yes.
Yes. So we will be engaged in recreational delivery. We again won't be doing the deliveries ourselves, but we'll be working with adult use dispensaries and providing that service there as well.
Can you explain your model? I mean, if you're not collecting the money, you're serving as kind of a service provider for the end user. Are you making a commission on this? Exactly. If I was an investor in your company, how do I make money on this? I had to ask the question.
Yeah, of course. We charge a flat fee per order, and the dispensary pays that. So as a customer or a patient, you don't pay any additional fees at all. You pay the same delivery fee as if you order directly from the dispensary. There's no additional fees. You pay the same taxes, obviously. And so where we think our value comes in is in a couple of ways. We are, as a team, a group of e-commerce veterans. We know how to build a customer experience that's incredibly easy to shop, that gives you all of the product information you thought you needed, as well as information you didn't know you needed. We have a discovery tool on site. So if you're new to the category and you don't really know how do I even shop for this product, we have a step-by-step process that can take you to the product that best matches the things you told us that you want. And then in terms of delivery and logistics expertise, we're built off the same technology that Drizzly has been building for the last 8 years. Drizzly is the largest and most successful alcohol delivery e-commerce platform in North America. So we almost, we have a 8-year start on the absolute best logistics to bring regulated product to consumers quickly, cleanly, legally compliant, a great customer experience. And then the last piece is that we are also marketers. And so we really know how to reach the consumer. That's hard. I think about all of the things that dispensaries have to do, and these operators, they have to grow the product. They have to be experts at growing the product. They have to produce the product. They have to manufacture it. They have to get it from point A to point B in terms of wholesale. They have to run retail operations. They have to hire staff. And so that last piece around e-com, and delivery, that's all we do. That's all we do. And so we don't have to be experts at the full supply chain. And I think when I think about everything these operators have to think about and do well, if we can provide an excellent service that's incremental to their business, brings them new customers, and allows them another way of servicing their customer, that's a great solution for them.
And I'm guessing the scalability of this is endless because even though we're in Massachusetts, an adult use recreational legal state, still only one of 12 around the country. And are we looking toward north of the border there, up in Canada, where is the whole country's legal? I would guess that's a pretty good expansion place for you to look into.
It's not on the immediate roadmap anywhere in my line of sight right now. I won't say never, but we're focused on the U.S. right now.
There you go. And it is still a struggle in the United States. You brought up the stigma right off the bat. Anytime that you have the word cannabis in any kind of a news release or even in casual conversation with people that maybe are not enlightened to what's going on in this business, we all face this. I got a question for you. Where are you doing your banking? Because even though you're not touching the product, you're getting money from the cannabis community. So how does that work?
Well, again, we're not a license holder, so we're not kind of subject to the same restrictions and banking challenges that our dispensary and operator partners are, delivery partners in the future. There are banks that are more cannabis friendly than others. And so we were able to find a really great reputable bank that would work with us. It is legal what we're doing. So without a license. So it wasn't easy, but we found one that we feel really good about.
And I don't want to know, but I'm guessing there are service fees involved because I try to do it
Nothing's
myself.
Free.
And nothing is free in this world. And luckily, the credit union community is welcoming the cannabis community, and they have been extremely helpful with me as well. So, Meredith Mahoney, I think you've got a very interesting niche product. I think you're in good hands with the Drizzly folks because I've been pretty familiar with what they've been doing over the last few years. And I wish you nothing but the best. I hope there's a way for us to work together in some capacity because when it comes to spreading the word, someone with a loud voice and knows how to project it can be very helpful. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I hope so as well. And I really do appreciate you giving me the chance to talk about Lantern. We're extremely excited about it and think it's going to be a great addition to the industry.
Well, best of luck, Meredith Mahoney and Lantern. And you can find them online at
lanternnow.com.
That's right. See, that was right. It was a well played. That was a well placed setup for you, and you nailed it, Meredith. Good
Thank
job.
you.
All right, that's Meredith Mahoney from lanternnow.com. Until the next time, I'm the host of In the Weeds, Jimmy Young. Thanks for watching. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
We Talk Now, We Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and